Good evening, mini BFFs and friends and family. Thank you for joining me for another story time. Tonight, our story is called Ira Wordworthy, and he is another member of the town of Barely There. He owns the Seed, Feed, and Mercantile at the center of town where everybody congregates after school. They like to go there and get snacks and read their books right on his porch, but Ira's pretty cranky about it. And it isn't until one of the school children realizes what Ira's cranky disposition is and helps him out that he's able to join in all the fun with everyone else. So let's read. Farther than far, and to the very edge of the horizon, was a path bordered in lacy fern. If you walked down that path in search of lost hopes and dreams, you would find a land called Barely There. Barely There, a land where old fat owls tell you stories true and laugh, but never at you. Barely There, where dreams swirl and twist with clouds that fly, and the morning mist seems to sigh. Barely There, Barely There. If you followed that path as it twisted and turned, at first you might feel lost, but the deeper you went, the more you would find that it all began to look oh so familiar. If you followed it farther still, the twisting path would turn into a softly rutted red clay road. Things were a bit more organized here. Plants were planted in orderly rows of corn, wheat, and barley. Houses sat back from the dusty road with shutters drawn and porches swept clean. Woodchucks and gophers and old guinea hens plowed and tended the fields that blended with nature's wondrous bounty. The dusty red clay road wound through fields and clusters of cabins and cottages, past the school with its rusty old bell, and ended at the absolute center of the land of Barely There. It was here, at the edge of this tiny town square, that the only store stood. Wordworthy's Feed, Seed, and Mercantile. 3 worn, rickety steps up, and you were on the porch where barrels and boxes of seeds became chairs and benches, and old screen doors creaked open and crash-slammed shut as outside walked an old gray badger dressed in a starch white shirt, a black bow tie, and a crisp, clean apron tied round his chubby waist. This was Ira Wordworthy, the proprietor of the Mercantile, who always swept his porch with a bundled broom of hazel hay as the sun came up to greet the day. The inside of the store was jumbled in an odd sort of way. Oh yes, the vegetables were neatly stacked together. Rolled ropes and twines hung tidily from rafter pegs. All was neat and nice and natty, just like Ira's starched shirt, but odd just the same. Large cans of paint were on the shelves with large cans of beans. Boxes of dried soup were mixed with boxes of soap. There didn't seem to be any rhyme or reason for how old Wordworthy inventoried his goods. He happily dusted the cans and boxes while he whistled a tune, never quite understanding why folks scratched their head and wonder when they shopped in his store. But Wordworthy's Feed, Seed, and Mercantile was more than just a store. It was a meeting place, the center of all activity. It was a place where frumpy farmers could stand around and whistle in the wind about weather and other wonders. It was here, too, that the children of Barely There came after school to buy a soda or a sarsaparilla and giggle about those growing up things. They would buy their drinks and sometimes a persimmon or a plum, and then they'd sit on the boot-thumped steps and read a book from the library. It was odd, but Ira didn't like the children sitting around on his steps. He didn't mind them drinking a pop or eating a plum, but it just plain bothered him that they sat around reading. Oh, why can't they take their books and flip those pages someplace else, he grumbled. as he dusted the rows and rows of cans. "Books and learning are a waste of time, and those kids should be learning a trade or mastering the fine art of farming," he fussed and fumed. Finally, one day he could stand no more, and he stormed into the back room of the store. He found paint and brush and board, and with a mighty flourish he painted a sign, an important sign, for things to come and barely there. He worked and worked for the longest time, and finally, with a bit of paint splattered on his nose and eyeglasses, he whistled in satisfaction as he stood back and looked at his handiwork. The next afternoon, just before school let out, he hung the sign on the porch outside. He bent a couple of nails in the process, but the sign was hung just the same. When the school bell rang, the children, as was their wont, rushed to the store to buy their tasty treats. Ira stood and watched, arms crossed, tapping a soft, furry foot on the porch. The children looked at him, looked curiously at the sign, and then dashed inside. One by one, as Ira glared, they grabbed and paid for their goodies and then zipped down the stairs and off to the meadows to read a bit and munch a bunch. Satisfied that the sign had done its duty, the crotchety old storekeeper went back inside. The last of the children to leave the store was a shy little raccoon called Rita. The screen door squeaked and slammed as she stepped outside with an apple in her hand. She found a sunny spot on the stairs, and there she sat down to read a book. Ira's eyes opened angrily, opened wide, as he peered at her through the window from inside. There she was, first standing and now sitting below the fresh new sign. He was sure Rita pretended she didn't see it. "That girl must be blind," raged Ira as he stormed out the door. "Ahem," said he in a grumbling way. "Maybe you didn't see the sign." "Oh, yes, Mr. Wordworthy, sir," she replied in the sweetest of tones. "I saw the sign. It is very pretty." "Pretty indeed," he roared, as he tapped the sign with his furry finger. "This sign says that all children of the younger persuasion are not to litter, loiter, or lay around here." Then, to his shock and chagrin, little Rita looked up at the sign and quietly said, "No, it doesn't." "Then, my little furry friend," he glowered, "just what does the sign say?" Rita squinted her eyes and looked at the sign again. "It doesn't say anything." Ira looked at the sign, squinting in concentration. "Besides," added Rita, "why do you care if I sit on your porch and read a book?" The little raccoon's gentle tones softened old Ira as his chin dropped to his chest. A small, stingy tear trickled from his eye. "Because I'm jealous," he truthfully said, "for I can neither read nor write, nary a word, nary a letter." Sure enough, if you looked carefully at the sign, you would see it was nothing more than squiggles, wiggles, and smears. It was very pretty, but it said nothing. Every night thereafter, when the store was closed at dark, Rita sat and candles flickered and taught Ira how to read and write. As time went on, the old badger learned to make his letters strong, and soon he could read for himself rather than being told. The little raccoon loved playing teacher, and she would diligently grade his papers and would listen intently as he read his lessons through and through. From then on and thereafter, Ira Wordworthy's store was a haven for children and their books. The mercantile became very organized as Ira learned to read the writing on his goods. He had known all the time that soap didn't go with soup. He just couldn't read the labels. Oh, and that screen door squeaked and slammed all day long as children rushed in and out with sweets to eat and good books to read. Business was good, but Ira's mind was even better as he read book after book after book. Minds do matter in the land of Barely There, and books are better when read and fed to eager little minds. Everything turned out pretty well, even though old Ira never quite learned how to spell. In the land of Barely There. The end. Well, friends, I hope to see you back next week. Bye.